All right, Andrew, let's start with the Longform Editions label, which I have been a big fan of for years. Congratulations. But we understand
Thank
it's
you.
drawing to a close. Tell us what's happening.
It's kind of like, in one way, what's not happening. Mark Gowing and I have been working on long form editions for nearly 7 years, but prior to that, we ran a label called Preservation, and we were releasing music from 2001. And so it's quite a long time that we've been doing that together. We have a great friendship and a great working relationship. It's been going really fantastically, but our lives have changed and evolved. We have, um, different things that we want to focus on. We're still great mates. There's nothing afoot there at all. There's nothing sinister. It's just quite banal. I have a family that's growing. My daughter started school a couple of weeks ago, and I really just want to have more focus and presence in that area. And we both work full time, and we just need a little bit of extra space. One of the things about long form editions, Kevin, is it was very cyclical, and in its nature, that's what we decided upon for it to have momentum and to carry. And that cyclical nature also makes things very tight. So uh, every 2 months we'd release 4 pieces of music, as you know, and we just decided we needed to free ourselves from that cycle as well. And we'll probably engage in some sort of activity with music at some point, but the cycle will be very different. So we're just taking a step back from that. And we're really happy with the way long form editions has run and been received. And generally, it's been a really wonderful experience. So we're happy to wrap it up with those things in mind.
How do you feel about it looking back? It's quite a long list of contributors.
Yeah, look, it definitely exceeded our expectations when Mark and I spoke about this project. We had a desire to do something new from away from the typical label format and style of releasing, and we thought about all the tools that were available to us, digital platforms, streaming. How could we make something accessible that was also adventurous? I think we wanted that for this project, and I think we tried to keep the idea very simple. So creativity was really the main filter by which this project was able to run on, and I feel good about it. It's been really great. It's been an artist first project, I think. I'm really happy for the feedback that the artists felt like they had a platform to stretch out, try and realize some new ideas and see where it led them. It was really about that kind of pursuit for them. And I'm really happy that it turned out that way for a lot of people. And that experience was really good. I really value the exchange with artists. It was a real joy being a huge fan of music, as I have been since I was very little, to speak with people who make it and live it and breathe it. And to have that exchange with those artists was just a real joy. And most of those exchanges really revolved around music and creation, and were far removed from the business or admin side of things. And I really value that as well. So that's how I look back on it. I feel like it was really valuable in that regard to have that space that was removed from those typical trappings.
Is there a clear contrast for you between the work on preservation and the work on long form? How do you think about the two?
Yeah, certainly. We've talked about this quite consistently recently. When we started preservation, obviously we hadn't really done anything like a label before. We just had our time and energy. And in one respect, long form editions also ran on our time and energy as well. But we were learning the ropes when we started preservation. But even when we had a surer footing after several years and releasing things, and we had global distribution and a presence and all that kind of thing, we still got caught up in typical things such as finances and distributors and all the third parties that basically put business first and also make that business first something that gets in the way of your creativity when it comes to releasing music. And it started to really weigh on us considerably because in contrast, Longform Editions was really about the music first, and we had created a platform that was reasonably simple for us to execute, and it didn't rely on anybody else to make it work, really. I mean, obviously, the music was through Bandcamp, but that's been a solid platform for a while, despite two sales. It's remained as it is for now and the duration of this project. But we didn't have to deal with distributors who took records on sale or return or didn't pay you for the records that they took. When you're on the other side of the world, I guess it's easy to make you the last people to get paid. And we found that a few times. So those kinds of things, weighed on us in terms of where we wanted to be at with long form editions. We still wanted to have a music project. Mark and I still wanted to work together, and long form editions was what we realized from those conversations, as well as wanting to realize a creative platform that stood on its own terms, not just as a reaction to everything else that we'd done previously. But those things go into it. That experience and that knowledge that we gained from preservation went into it. And yeah, there's a contrast there. I think it was a smoother ride for us. We also didn't create any expectations. I think when you work in physical formats, sometimes you need to create expectations because you need to make the money back to keep going when it comes to selling records. And selling records was getting tougher around the time we started long form editions. So digital only allowed us to be more adventurous. We wanted to be adventurous in allowing artists to make long pieces of music that could let them explore a particular idea or theme. So the adventurous side of things was great, but also the lack of expectation or pressure was there as well. So it was really valuable for us to have that experience and to know that that experience is actually possible.
Was there something besides obviously the long length of the works that you released? Something about the artists you selected that ties them together in your mind?
Look, it's a really good question. When it comes to the curatorial end of long form editions, look, we sort of created a bit of a wish list, and we followed our noses to that end as well. So the wish list was made up of artists that we had worked with before, that we really enjoyed working with and thought we'd love to work with again and see where this platform takes them. We had a wish list of artists that we really loved working with. Sorry, I should start that again. We had a wish list of artists that we had never worked with before and thought maybe this is an opportunity to work with artists where the commitment isn't great. Some of these artists already have arrangements in place to release their full-bodied works, so to speak, their albums and so forth, the ones that they tour on and look to generate a lot of press with and so forth. But this was an opportunity of substance for them to be engaged with, but didn't rely on that commitment as well. So there was an opportunity there to try and work with artists that we'd always really enjoyed. And then there was the discovery point as well. There were artists along the way that we'd never heard of. And we're constant listeners of music, and we used the opportunity to find artists that we enjoyed, and we contacted them, or they contacted us after a while, and there were pieces that came in and, we were really excited about them and we wanted to be involved. So yeah, it was kind of like a three-pronged approach there. And what you see in the catalog is like a measure of all three.
You mentioned the curatorial aspect of what you've done with the label. Something that you've now been at for a quarter of a century. Curious how you think that role has evolved over that not insignificant period of time. It's a different world.
Well, I work in community radio here in Sydney. And one of the things that I like to express when I talk about community radio to the greater music industry at large, who at one point decided that streaming platforms were going to save the music industry. And it's only saved a part of the music industry, and maybe, to put a finer point on it, a very small part of the music industry. So what we have in the community radio sector, we've got in Australia, we've got over 400 stations that all have particular niche audiences that they work to. And there are a lot of presenters who are looking to curate their own radio programs and bring something different to the audience. And the audience is big. It's 5.2 million listeners weekly. And I see an alignment there with any kind of musical pursuit. Right now, we really need curation. We need people who care about music and are passionate enough to work out a sensibility around presenting it. And I think that it's so valuable. You look at the rise of the Substack newsletter, and Substack is completely removed, or people who write great music Substacks are completely removed from the corporate interests that, you know, are now kind of squashing reviews in larger magazines or online publications, and just not necessarily interested. That the options for, you know, music to get out there are shrinking. So curation is just so valuable. So you look at Substack, you look at experimental outlets and what they're doing, and it is quite vital. So if you find somebody that you like, or if you find a label that you like, you'll find somebody that you like, and it's great to attach yourself to them and follow their journey and what they're sharing with you. And I think that that's an incredibly valuable resource that has potentially been forgotten, because you can have everything at your fingertips, but radio's great. You have someone coming through your speaker enthusing about something, or a Substack, which is essentially doing the same thing. And, you know, we need those people in our lives, you know. I really look forward to certain Substacks every week. I really look forward to certain radio shows each week, even though I am a voracious music listener and I love to find what I haven't heard. I need those people to bring it to me more often than not as well. It doesn't matter how much time I spend looking out for it. They always know something more. And it's really great and so vital today, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, just given the sheer volume of work that is available now, the barriers to entry have virtually disappeared when it comes to producing music. And so I think curators become, you know, kind of traffic cops for people who are looking to find quality work.
Yeah. Do you think traffic cops, though, Kevin, are close to gatekeepers out of interest?
No, I don't. I think that the curator today is vitally important. Very much with you on that. I think they they provide a necessary service, but that service does not preclude access to anything else. You mentioned Bandcamp, which I think is a really vital part of the music world that you and I pay attention to. Everything is available and easy to access, and obviously, in many, many cases, free to access. So the curator becomes the net through which you're able to find music that is worth your time.
Absolutely. I hope that Bandcamp remains that kind of platform. I think, you know, since there's been two sales of it in recent years, I think obviously there's a worry that it's not going to be that. And I hope that something else emerges that can be the same thing if that happens. I think there's a couple of platforms that may take that mantle at one point. But yeah, I just think that curation is, as you say, just so great. And you look at options out there, and you need to just latch onto a few. And that obviously means that you're going to miss out on a few as well. But there's only so much you can do. We all have lives to lead. And, you know, I've got a few Substacks that I don't listen to every week. I don't read every week, I should say, and I want to get to them, but time's the thing. But yeah, find your people. That's what it's all about. Finding your people. I think it's another way of community. I think online. I think there can be such a thing as an online community, uh, and I feel like it's valuable to have that exchange.
You mentioned your work in community radio. I first started working in community radio in 1985, and
Wow.
it was more college radio than it was community radio in those days. But thankfully, it evolved from there. I think we have a
Yeah.
good sense of the role that those stations continue to play in the music world. But I'm always curious what role they play in the community that they serve. And I'm curious your experiences in Australia with your work.
Yeah, look, it really depends on the community radio station, Kevin. So in regional or remote areas, they're incredibly vital, especially in Australia. In the last 2 years, we've had extreme bushfires, and national radio isn't going to cover local areas as precisely and as up to the moment as a community radio station will. So they're vital as information resources for local areas. And they reflect the community there as well in terms of cultural interests, local interests, things that are just going on in the local area. You know, for larger metropolitan areas, they represent an alternative listening point. Those community, that kind of community outreach that I mentioned is still palpable, but in bigger metropolitan areas, stations have a kind of cultural remit in a lot of ways to serve communities with alternative music, alternative viewpoints, those kinds of things, and they're really valuable in a big city where you can't turn around without seeing an advertisement from a corporate. So yeah, it's different strokes for different folks, I suppose. But as I mentioned, we've got over 400 stations, and they all have their remit, educational, cultural. We have religious stations. We have multicultural stations. We have First Nations stations, and they all have their role to play in amplifying diverse voices to our country.
I was visiting your site to prepare for our chat today and saw the Angel Bat Dweed release. Is this your last one then?
That is most certainly our final release. Yes.
Okay. Tell me about it. It is extraordinary.
Oh, maybe I should ask you to tell me about it. So Angel Bat Darwood is quite simply, from my interactions with her, quite clearly an incredible human being. Just apart from her musical and creative abilities, which are phenomenal, her way of thinking is phenomenal. And I approached her essentially to ask her if she would take part in Longform Editions, I think back in 2019 or 2020. And so her first work with us was Harkening Etudes. And once again, one of the great things about Longform Editions was hearing a work from an artist who you admire, but then delivering something almost completely unexpected. And when I first heard that piece, I had to send it to Mark and said, what do you think this is? Like, I was intrigued, and I kind of just wanted to speak to him about it. And that's was really great in terms of how it provoked me and made me curious. And anyway, that went on to be a very popular piece in the catalogue. And we asked Angel to do something else for us. And she was really excited to do that, which is a really great endorsement for us. I felt like if Angel wants to come back, then we must be doing something right. And Angel is also a really busy person. She had one project in mind that we were expecting. That project, I hope, will come to light one day. It's a really exciting one, but she felt she needed to dive deeper into it, and also realized that she needed to give us something, and she had been working on the Book of Enoch for a while, and she proposed it as an alternate, and it did not disappoint. It is just a really incredible piece. Honestly, like cosmic jazz does not give justice to what this piece is. That is just a tiny part of the ballpark which Angel Bat Darwin exists in. And I think that piece really typifies the value of someone who is able to work in a space where there are really, in a lot of ways, no limits, and take all of the things that go into their thinking and being, as an artist, and really lay it all out in a beautiful, measured, exciting fashion that is essentially a journey. So, yeah, it's an incredible piece of music, and it arrived to us very late in 2024, and by that point, we had decided that we would be wrapping things up with Longform Editions, but we really still wanted to be a part of it. So we spoke to her about it being a sort of a surprise final drop, to mark the occasion. And I think that to have that piece to mark the occasion was just a real privilege.
That's a wonderful endpoint. What's next for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I mentioned, yeah, I'm just sort of want to go even deeper into family life. Um, that's really where it's at for me. I have a newsletter called First Impressions where I review music and sometimes pontificate on the state of the music industry. First Impressions is really valuable, a really great outlet for me to keep up my sort of listening habits and curatorial mindset. There is an idea that I am sort of constantly refining, and I hope that I will be able to potentially kick it off in 2026. It would hopefully involve some members of the long form community. One of the things that I really want to do is continue working with some of those people in some respect. But as I mentioned at the very top, that cyclical nature of long form editions would not be the pace that it works at. So to be a very different thing, but I'm hoping that it will still have the same creative presence as long form editions, and also offer more by way of the way it's mapped out and what it offers to our audience at the same time. So we shall see. It's hopefully in the works. I kind of really need to reset a little bit myself and think about what it means to go forward, and how to go forward with with substance and meaning as well. I think, when I work on something, I want it to be good. Obviously, I think that's a natural instinct for anybody being creative, but I don't want to do it for its own sake. So it's got to be tight, it's got to be right, and we'll see how we go.